The Braves are now just days away from reporting to spring training, and our positional preview series wraps up here today on BPTV with a deep dive on the Atlanta outfield. You know, the one led by National League MVP, unanimous MVP, Ronald Acuna Jr., and featuring two other talents who will be looking to take it to yet another level, take another step themselves in their young careers. I'm Grant McCauley alongside Chris Willis, and before we get started today, I want to make sure to remind you, hit like on this video, subscribe to the channel, share the show with a friend. All of those things help the show grow, and we appreciate all of those. We're closing in on 5,000 subscribers. If you're not one of those already, go ahead and fix that right now. Chris, we know that when you're booking your main event match, it can be quite difficult. And since The Rock is not walking through that door to make things even more complicated for the Braves and upset the order of things, we're going to stick with Ronald Acuna Jr., who is, without question, the head of the table for the Atlanta outfield as the Braves look to, if you'll pardon another one, finish their story this October.
Without a doubt. I mean, the reigning NL MVP, unanimous MVP at that. Um, I mean, he took his game to the next level last year. Everything we could have expected. He's locked up long term, and I mean, he's just kind of sitting back now, waiting to see, what's he going to do for an encore, because last season was just so incredible. It's just the bar is set really, really high.
Yeah, it certainly is. And all of Major League Baseball had to acknowledge him. And Acuna leads us off here today because he does it better than anyone in the game when it comes to that. The numbers he put up in 2023 reached a level that I'm not sure even Acuna himself could have fully expected when the season began. He was coming off a 2022 campaign in which he was still hampered by that surgically repaired knee. And Ronald, he played the game with no restrictions last year. And I think we saw exactly what that can mean. He led the majors with a 416 on base percentage, 217 hits, 149 runs scored, 383 total bases, and 73 steals. That a new Braves record. Forget the 40-40 club. Acuna was the fifth man ever to do that, and they kept on going for a 40-70 season while driving in 106 runs out of the leadoff spot with an NL best 1,016 OPS. Simply a remarkable campaign. MVP, All-Star, Silver Slugger, career highs across the board. I don't think it's a stretch to say this was the most impressive single season in franchise history from the offensive standpoint. And Chris, that covers a lot of ground and a lot of all-time greats.
You're right. I mean, I was digging into the numbers today, and I mean, it's just like every time you look, you find something surprising. But I think the thing that jumped out to me last year was just how consistent he was from opening day on. Had a 146 weighted runs created plus in May. That was his lowest total of any month, which is, if weighted runs created plus 100 is league average. So he was 46% better than the league average hitter in his worst month. It was unbelievable. And I mean, when you look at it too, he underperformed some of his metrics. He led the majors, I believe, in barreled outs. 428 weighted on base average against a 463 expected weighted on base average. I mean, if those two numbers are close together, are we looking at 50-70? I mean, it's unreal to think about. And that's the one thing where you just can't completely shut the door on him having another one of these type of seasons where he's just, he just dominates across the board.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers jump off the page for Acuna, and I know everyone wants to see him run it back, both literally and figuratively, and do it all over again. And I honestly, Chris, I don't know how we temper our expectations, but I'll say this. We're all expecting big things again from Ronald Acuna Jr., who, as you pointed out, he might have underperformed some of the expected metrics, and he was hitting the ball harder and more consistently than some teams in Major League Baseball, and that's a mind-boggling thing in and of itself.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, he's just a one-man wrecking crew from that, from that leadoff spot. And then when you factor in this rest of this Braves lineup, I mean, it's got to be just an unbelievable task. And, the success he had in the first inning, whether it was homers or extra base hits, but just leading off the game, getting on base, just to setting the table. I mean, the Braves were a historically good offensive team in the first inning, and Acuna was just a huge, huge part of that.
He was perhaps the biggest part of that, and that's how you win an MVP, despite having teammates that were setting franchise home run records. And, up and down this lineup, you had guys who were contributing their part and then some when it came to what the Braves were able to do a year ago. And Acuna, he was leading that charge. Now, as we look around the rest of the Atlanta outfield, you'll find Michael Harris II and take a peek at those numbers from 2023, and you might just assume it was another solid season, and that is true. He batted .293, had an .818 OPS. He had 18 homers, 20 steals, Gold Glove defense, and another 4-win season. All of those things are great, but Harris, he had to turn things around drastically after 2 months of injury and struggles and avoided what appeared to be, at least for a little while, a potential sophomore slump. Let's hear a little bit from Harris on what he takes and those lessons that he learned in 2023 as he heads into a new season.
I guess the hole I was in, there was no way to even jump out of it. So I guess to be able to get out of there and I guess keep doing what I know I can do, and I guess a little more this year is really encouraging to go into this season.
Chris, I think one of the most impressive things about Harris that I saw a year ago was his ability to make those adjustments when he needed to, and the fact that he did not get overwhelmed. And I think that helped him dig out of that considerable hole he found himself toward the end of May when he was still batting well below 200.
Yeah, I mean, he was hitting 163 on June 6th, which is crazy when you consider where he finished. Over his last 100 games, hit 335, 365, 52 with a 912 OPS. It was an unbelievable turnaround because when you looked at his final numbers, you would have thought that he had a smooth season all the way through, but the injury early really set him back, and it took him a little bit to get going. But I think might be the year that we kind of see him. If he can stay healthy from the start, this might be the year that he finally puts everything together and we see him take his game to a next level.
I mean, the fact that we could say he hasn't put it all together is a tantalizing thought in and of itself, considering what he's done these first couple of years. And Harris is hardly a grizzled veteran, but he is growing up before our very eyes. And he recently talked about his journey from top prospect to big leaguer. Take a listen.
I was just thinking about it. I'm already going into my third, and I was just a rookie 2 minutes ago. So it's definitely moving quick, and I definitely see what I guess veterans say, and I guess other players that used to play say it goes by fast. So really cherish it and take it in, because I'm a third one. Oh man, I'm getting old. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna try to take it in and make sure I guess live my best life and career.
Now, Chris, I still think he's got plenty of time to settle in. As you mentioned, maybe that next level is there for him as soon as 2024. But after 2 years with a long-term contract already in hand, I can't say this. It's going to be fun to watch what Michael Harris gets up to, not just in 2024, but in the years to come.
Yeah, and I mean, I think at some point we're going to see a string of Gold Glove awards come his way. We focus a lot on the offense, but just having him in center field defensively has been a huge lift for this whole team. I mean, that was one of the reasons that the Braves kind of rushed him up in his rookie season, just because they needed him defensively in center field, and whatever he gave them offensively was just kind of a boost. So, I think Michael Harris can be an all-star in 2024, and I think we're going to continue to see his maturation on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, if we need to make some bold predictions at some point, I don't mean hot takes. I just mean bold predictions for 2024. I'm not sure if it's the boldest of all the predictions that Michael Harris could be an all-star, but it's one that certainly I think a lot of people might have on their list. Now, as you slide over to left field, the Braves made a change there that surprised many, if not most, as far as the name was concerned, because they picked up Jarred Kelenic in a trade with the Seattle Mariners, and that move set off a domino effect of trades and only underscored, I think, how much this front office must believe that Atlanta is the place that Kelenic will tap into his considerable potential and put it all together at the big league level. Let's hear from the new Atlanta left fielder, because I think he's pretty excited to get started as well. Here's Kelenic on being part of such a talented lineup as the Atlanta Braves.
When you have like 1 through 9 like that, there's no guy that, feels like they have to be the guy all the time. And, there's a time I was saying, like last year, we weren't playing that well, and I think that it had lasted longer than we anticipated because we had so many guys trying to be the guy because we wanted to win. And when you got a lineup like that, just filled with talent, you have guys that can just go out and do their job, and I think it's a recipe for greatness.
Yeah, and the Braves' greatness was on full display last year as far as a lineup is concerned. Kelenic, meanwhile, playing for the Seattle Mariners, there were a lot of expectations that were heaped on him from the moment he was acquired in a trade with the New York Mets that sent Edwin Diaz to the Big Apple. A lot of folks felt that Kelenic was going to be a fixture, a superstar in Seattle. It just didn't work out that way, though. But the Braves, they're hoping that they're right about this little gambit that they've taken on Kelenic and turning his talent into consistent results here, beginning as early as 2024 and having 5 years of team control. That's not a small aspect of this trade either. Kelenic batted .253, had 11 homers, 13 stolen bases, and an OPS just shy of 750 a year ago for the Mariners. He has all the tools, but Chris, it's been difficult at times for Kelenic to really establish himself at the big leagues. Do you feel like this change of scenery is one of the things that could help Kelenic to unlock and to solve big league pitching and to really become the player that so many, including himself, believe he can be?
I think the biggest thing for him coming to Atlanta is a lot of the pressure is off. He knows he's going to hit towards the bottom of the order. He can relax. He can kind of just be himself. He doesn't have to be the savior of anything here. The Braves need him to go out and play good defense in left field. And then, we'll let whatever happens at the plate take care of itself. It sounds like they're going to let him face left-handers at least early on. So I think, the runway's clear for him, so to speak. And I mean, when you look at his season last year, he struck out a lot. He's got over a 30% strikeout rate for his career in the majors. But at the same time, he hit the ball a whole lot harder last year, too. His average EV jumped up. His hard hit rate jumped up. Ground ball rate jumped up as well. But I'm excited to see what Kevin Seitzer and the rest of the Braves hitting coaches can do with this kid, because if he can maintain hitting the ball hard the way he did last year and lift it a little bit more while playing half of his games at Truist Park, I think he's going to be able to realize some of that potential.
Yeah, and Brian Snitker said, I mean, it's not about, thinking about expectations and putting those on this kid, but they're excited to put him in their hitting environment, and that includes a ballpark that we'll talk about in just a moment that he could enjoy quite a bit. Now, Eddie Rosario was a nice fit a year ago. He was one of multiple Braves to, get in on the power display and hit more than 20 home runs. There were some highs and lows for him, of course, last year, but can Kelenic surpass the numbers that Eddie Rosario put up a year ago? If so, I think Alex Anthopoulos has pulled yet another rabbit out of his hat when it comes to a trade, and the Braves could be set for 5 very intriguing years when it comes to this former mega prospect in Kelenic turning into a fixture in the Atlanta lineup. And let's add this, and I know these comments were taken, I think, a bit out of context and maybe misconstrued by Seattle fans, but Kelenic realizes as a lefty hitter at Truist Park, he has a chance to put up some very, very big numbers.
Oh, it's better than Seattle, that's for sure. Seattle ranks last, so I'm excited to hit here. I think the ball should hopefully fly a little bit more than Seattle. But I think the biggest thing is I just got to stay middle. I don't want to try to pull that ball over there. I'll be terrible.
Yeah, he'd like to go without being terrible, I'm sure, this year and struggling, but the environment is a big change. And it wasn't a comparison, I think, between the cities or necessarily even the organizations, but we don't want to get off in the weeds about all of that. But as far as ballparks are concerned, Truist Park is a great place to hit for a left-handed hitter, and it could be pretty tantalizing to see what he does in this hitter-friendly park. And as I said, in the Braves hitting environment, Chris.
Yeah, and I mean, he had a series last year at Truist Park and homered, in one of the 3 games, which so that's already something there. But I mean, yeah, I didn't take that as a shot at the city of Seattle. I took that more as the ball does not fly well at T-Mobile Park up there. So I like how Kelenic's kind of approaching this. He's approached it as a fresh start. Everything that's happened's kind of in the past. I think he's trying to still figure out who he is. But it's a whole lot easier to do that when you have a job, you're going to be in the lineup every day, you can relax. And, the Braves need him to be good, be league average. That's about what Eddie Rosario was last year, but he doesn't have to carry the offense, the lineup or the team, and I think that's a lot of the unfair expectations that get, laid on rookies a lot of times, or young players, top prospects like he was.
Yeah, and you heard Jarred Kelenic say it himself. He realizes that he's part of a much bigger machine, and a machine that's very capable. And there's a lot of hitters, I think, in this lineup he's going to have a lot of fun kind of learning from and seeing how they approach things. And it's being able to level up in that regard is no small thing either. Now, we talked about this trio in the Atlanta outfield, which has considerable potential, to use that phrase again. It could be the most productive outfield in the game. That wouldn't be a stretch. But this is where I'm going to have to plug in the Atlanta designated hitter as well, a man who won't see much, if any, time in the outfield this season if all things go according to plan. And that man is Marcell Ozuna. Was 2023 ever a year for him? His time with Atlanta and perhaps his career appeared to be hanging by the thinnest of threads after a dreadful month of April numbers-wise. But then a hot streak and a power display that followed was one of the main stories and driving factors of this Braves historic offense, and a return to form for a player who failed to live up to his long-term contract up to that point. 40 home runs, a career high, another 100 RBI season for him as well, just his second. Chris, this was the Marcell Ozuna that the Braves signed up for after his monster year in the shortened season of 2020.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, as you alluded to, I mean, we felt like it was probably days from his Braves tenure coming to an end. And then he goes to Miami and he got hot and he started hitting and he never quit. I mean, when you look at his final numbers and then factor in how terrible he was in the month of April, it's pretty eye popping. And, I mean, I don't know what to expect out of him this year, honestly, just because the way his career's gone. When he's historically underperformed his metrics, but when the stars have aligned, he's put up some monster seasons. So, if he's going good, he's a great bat in the middle of that order. If he's not, then Braves may have to figure out some things. But I know he's getting close to he's in the final year of his contract. I know there's a club option for next season too. So I think he's going to be wanting to produce at a high level again and maybe stick around Atlanta at least for another season.
And if nothing else, I mean, the confidence that has to come from becoming or refining that form and putting up the kind of numbers that you were accustomed to, and maybe even then some. It really is. You look at the Braves' expectations. I mean, if he's able to do 2/3 or 3/4 of what he did a year ago, the Braves are in a really good spot. Now, if he backtracks into where he was in 2021 and 2022, that's a bit of a different discussion, but we'll stick a pin in all of that for now, just to say that the Braves do have a powerful option at DH in addition to this powerful outfield. Now, the rest of the mix in the outfield will have a couple of familiar faces in camp and spring training. And it might sound like Groundhog Day because we may have been having this exact same discussion about a year ago this time with some of the same guys trying to make the team. Atlanta re-signed Jordan Luplow and Eli White to minor league deals and invited those guys to big league camp. I'm probably not alone in feeling like bringing back Kevin Pillar could have been a great fit, and for the role that he was going to be expected to play and everything he brought to the Atlanta clubhouse. That's off the table, though, as Pillar is one of many Braves who will be former Braves, I should say, suiting up with the Chicago White Sox in 2024. And speaking of the White Sox, the Braves signed switch hitter Leury Garcia to a minor league deal, so he'll be in camp as well. These names may not be the biggest, Chris, but all we're really talking about here is the need for a right-handed hitter, I think, to pitch in some in left field and maybe against a tougher left-handed pitching matchup. But as you talked about earlier, and I think the Braves have already pretty much put out there, I think they'd like to see Kelenic get the call against tough southpaws as well, and they don't plan on turning him into a platoon player.
Yeah, that's the plan, at least from the start. They're going to give him a lot of rope. I think I agree with you. I think, they're going to be looking for a right-handed hitter. Maybe that guy's already in camp. Maybe he's already on the roster. But I think that's something that they're going to keep an eye on, as far as teams start to pare down in their spring rosters. I mean, a right-handed hitting outfielder seems like be somebody that could fit in well. And, even if the playing time's not going to be there consistently, just having somebody that could fill in that spot. Eli White, he had a tremendous spring last year. Jordan Luplow was slowed by injury, and that ended up costing him his roster spot. So those two guys will be interesting to watch, but I'm going to be watching the waiver wire as well.
Yeah, and everybody should be. The Braves have done some shopping in spring training before to round out their roster. You and I talked about it on the podcast to be named later as part of the Battery Power podcast network of sorts. And, we got Matt Joyce in 2019. He turned into a very useful player. So you never know who might be available at the end of spring training as teams have to make some difficult decisions to get it down to 26 men on the active roster. And the Braves have a few spots to work with heading into spring training as well. We'll see how they fill all of those and who they may be able to stock AAA Gwinnett with, because, injuries and inconsistency can change the plans. Even the best laid plans and even the best teams in baseball are not immune to that, as Brian Snitker pointed out last year, as the Braves won 104 games, but they did so overcoming some key injuries at times. Chris, we talked about the infield last week, and when you add it together with this group, these outfielders, designated hitter also taken care of, you get the makings of the best lineup in baseball. I know they're hoping to pick up where they left off a year ago and carry that all the way through October. But this offense is a big reason why the Braves entered the season as the prohibitive World Series favorites, if you like looking at projections and odds, which is another thing we recently did, Chris.
Oh, no, without a doubt. I mean, in top to bottom, when you look at this lineup, it's just impressive. I mean, and these guys are young. They're locked up long term. They're in the prime of their careers. And, it just looks like this is going to be a group that's going to carry this franchise, for years to come. So it's very exciting, especially coming off the numbers that they put up last year. I mean, you have to wonder, can you expect that again? But I mean, at the same time, it's hard to look past this group because I feel like they can reach that level again and maybe even go past it.
Yeah, when you bring the cast back and do the sequel, this offense being what it was a year ago, it's hard not to have sky-high expectations for what that next chapter is going to look like, that next season, if you will, as far as Braves baseball is concerned. The offense expected to be front and center, and Ronald Acuna Jr. in the Atlanta outfield looking like they could be very, very big contributors, as Acuna, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is ahead of the table for this entire Braves offensive operation. That's going to do it for this episode of BPTV. We hope you enjoyed this look at the Atlanta outfield and our preview series, our positional preview series for the Braves. Make sure you check out all 4 episodes right here on the Battery Power YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you'll get an alert every time we drop a new episode. We thank you as always for riding along with us, and we will catch you next time. And until then, so long, Braves country.